Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review. Welcome, everyone, to the Evolution Through Science panel. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and happy Global Oneness Day, and thanks so much for joining us. The Science panel is always one of our most viewed panels, and it begins now. If you'd like to explore the leading edge of science, connection, and oneness, and the deep spiritual implications behind science, you're in the right place. Each of the scientists who were part of a program we created together called the Science of Self-Empowerment are back today to talk about their research, their conclusions, and their empowerment transformation techniques. I believe you'll find the panel discussion to be very powerful and enlightening. I'm going to introduce you to the panel now. I'm going to introduce panel members one at a time, and then we'll go right to questions and panel discussion. Gregg Braden is a New York Times bestselling author and internationally renowned as a pioneer in bridging science, spirituality, and the real world. Gregg's work is now featured on the History Channel, the Discovery Channel, the Sci-Fi Channel, ABC, and NBC. His discoveries have led to 11 award-winning books published in 38 languages. He is the author of The Isaiah Effect, Human by Design, and many other best-selling books. And welcome to Global Oneness Day, Gregg.
Steve, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be with this panel. And I want to say hello and welcome to all of our viewers, all of our listeners today. Thank you for tuning into the Science panel.
And great to have you with us, Gregg. And next up, Bruce H. Lipton, PhD, is an internationally recognized leader in bridging science and spirit, a stem cell biologist, best-selling author of The Biology of Belief, and recipient of the 2009 Goy Peace Award. He has been a guest speaker on hundreds of TV and radio shows, as well as a keynote presenter for national and international conferences. I'll be welcoming Bruce near the end of this program when he joins us to respond to his questions. Next, Deborah Rozman, President and Co-CEO of HeartMath, has over 30 years experience as a business executive, serial entrepreneur, psychologist, author, and educator. She's been involved with HeartMath since its inception, first as a founding executive director of the nonprofit Institute of HeartMath, then as Executive Vice President of HeartMath LLC, and for the past decade as founding director, president, and CEO of Quantum InTech Inc., DBA HeartMath Inc., and more recently of HeartMath LLC. Welcome to Global Oneness Day, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's really a privilege to be here and excited to be sharing the latest science with my co-panelists.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for being here. And Howard Martin brings more than 30 years of experience in business and personal development to the position of Executive Vice President, Strategic Development. Howard's responsibilities include global alliances, marketing, and program and product development. Howard has been instrumental in assisting Doc Childre in the development and teaching of HeartMath's programs since its inception. And welcome to Global Oneness Day, Howard.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks for Humanity's team for hosting this wonderful program, for having us, and glad to be here with Deborah and Gregg today. Looking forward to our discussion.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Thanks so much for being here. And once again, I'm truly excited about this panel. I've been looking forward to convening this program since the start of the year. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's go right to questions and discussion. So Gregg, I'm going to begin with you, if I may. Your research concludes that man did not slowly descend from Neanderthal. So what most of us learned in high school science is not true. How did you come to this conclusion, and what are the implications?
Well, I'm going to start with the implications first, Steve. You know, our world is changing. I know my life is changing. Our viewers' lives are changing. And we are presented with challenges that we have never seen in 5,000 years of recorded history. The better we know ourselves, the better we know ourselves, the better equipped we are to embrace and to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive in the new world that's emerging. And that's where these new discoveries are coming in, Steve. You know, we're all interested in our history. We're all interested in our origin. It would be interesting as a philosophical question at any time. But what we're dealing with right now is much more than philosophy. This goes right to the core of the way we have been taught to think about ourselves, our relationship to the earth, our relationship to the cosmos, perhaps most importantly, our relationship to one another. And these new discoveries, Steve, are telling us that we absolutely are not the product of a random process of mutations that happened sometime in our distant past. This is the story that we have been steeped in. When I was in school back in the 1950s, 60s, 1970s, and many of our viewers, many of our panelists, we were taught that we are the product of this a fluke of biology, is what many people call it, random mutations that happen for reasons that we don't understand. And the bottom line is the new DNA science. This sounds like science fiction, Steve. It sounds like the science fiction from Jurassic Park, where we now are able to extract the DNA from the fossilized remains of ancient forms of life, including the forms of life that we were taught are our ancestors, that we have descended from. And when we now reconstruct the genome from those ancient forms of life and compare their DNA to our DNA, the big surprise is that it's telling us that we did not descend from the forms of life, such as the ones you just mentioned, from Neanderthal. As a matter of fact, they're telling us that we shared the earth with Neanderthal. We walked the earth with them. The science is saying we probably had Neanderthal boyfriends and girlfriends. We interbred. So, you know, many of us do have Neanderthal DNA. People ask me this all the time. You know, they do Ancestry.com or 23andMe or, you know, one of these DNA analysis programs. And they come back and they say, well, look, I've got Neanderthal DNA. And many of us do, because this is precisely the point, because we shared the earth with them and interbred with them. It means that we could not have descended from them if we were actually sharing the earth with them. So now the big question is, if we know where we did not come from, where did we come from? And this is where the DNA science is also beginning to fill in a lot of the blanks and many of the missing pieces. What the science is showing, Steve, is that we as modern humans, we're called anatomically modern humans. We appeared on the earth 200,000 years ago, and that scientific fact is not contested. You can Google that. Most scientists are in full agreement with the 200,000 year date. The question is, where did we come from? Because there appears to be no evolutionary path leading to our emergence. We showed up fully intact, fully enabled with the brain capacity that we have now, the body proportions, the genome that we have right now, and all of the functions that we have right now. 200,000 years ago, we haven't changed. That is not Darwin's idea of evolution. Now, as a scientist, I cannot say where we did come from because our science has not been allowed to follow the evidence to where it leads so that we can answer that question. We've been so tied up in supporting what is called the standard model, the old story of evolution, and trying to fit every iota of evidence into the old story. Now, as a geologist, I have to be very clear. I'm a degree geologist. Evolution is a fact. I've seen it in the fossil record for many forms of life, plants, insects, animals. That story now is breaking down when it comes to humans. And a new human story is emerging. And it's a beautiful story, Steve, of hope, possibility, self-regulation. This is the key. We have had this ability to self-regulate our biology from the moment that we appeared 200,000 years ago. Scientists say it appears to be the result of an intentional, this is where it gets really tricky in the world of science, the result of an intentional fusion of very specific chromosomes that give us the abilities that we have today. And this science panel is going to be talking about what those abilities mean. I'm passionate about this conversation because when we begin to understand that we're not the product of a random process, it changes the way we think about ourselves. And it's that change that hopefully leads to us healing the fear and the hate that has emerged from so many different places in our world today as we are globalizing and pushing together religions and cultures and ways of thinking. We begin to think of ourselves as something more than a fluke of biology. That opens the door to peace.
Yes, it does. Well, thank you. And there's a lot to cover there, the science and implications. Thanks for bringing all that in, Gregg. And that sets the table, as you mentioned, nicely for this discussion. So Deborah, let me come over. HeartMath shares about synchronizing the heart, brain, and the body. What is your process for doing this?
Well, let me follow on what Gregg said, because he talked about self-regulation. And the capacity for self-regulation is unique to humans, but we have to activate it. It has to be self-generated, self-activated. And the heart, from the research at HeartMath and other places, is actually a key into the self-regulatory process. So when we activate heart qualities, heart attributes that have been talked about from time immemorial in ancient traditions, religions, cultures, like love, care, compassion, kindness, appreciation, gratitude, all the uplifting qualities we associate with the heart are really not religious qualities. They're qualities that actually activate the synchronization or harmonization between the heart, the brain, and the nervous system. And when we feel genuine heart attributes like love or compassion or appreciation, it creates a change in the heart's rhythmic beating pattern and in the heart rate. And that change you can see if you're hooked up to a heart rate variability monitor. You can see the change in the pattern from when you're stressed or frustrated, a very chaotic, irregular pattern, to when you're feeling those heart qualities, a very smooth, ordered, harmonious, coherent sine wave, like in physics, called a coherent waveform. The heart is actually signaling the brain through the medulla, through the up into the amygdala, the emotional memory center, to the thalamus, the center in the brain that synchronizes cortical function. And it's sending that signal about how we feel through that heart rhythm pattern, like Morse code, to the brain and body. With every heartbeat, the heart is beating information in the electromagnetic field of the heart about how we feel to every cell of our body. So as the heart signals these wonderful positive emotional qualities that we may be feeling to the brain, the thalamus synchronizes the information and sends it to the frontal lobes. That is where we have the capacity for impulse control, for self-regulation. And as we learn to activate more of this coherent heart rhythm, we have more of a coherent alignment between heart, brain, nervous system. The brain then tells the body how to respond. The brain is really an incredible pattern matching computer. So it's going to look at the heart rhythm pattern and it's going to say, okay, that's an incoherent pattern. That is, I've experienced that before in the amygdala. That's an anxiety pattern. I'm going to trigger and develop an anxiety habit. That shuts down our frontal lobes and higher cognitive functions. So we really are at the mercy of our fight, flight, fright response, our stress response. We can't think or see with higher reasoning or bigger picture or have access to the self-regulatory functions of the frontal lobes. We react. And we all know what that means. We get triggered, we react. And learning self-regulation means learning how to connect consciously and intentionally with the power of the heart, to be able to shift the heart rhythm pattern, which helps us more quickly shift mood, which shifts perception, which gives us access to this bigger picture thinking, our higher potentials. And as we practice, whether it's heart math techniques or other techniques, more and more, to shift our downsided projections, fears, into a neutral place at least, and activate more of that heart rhythm coherence, which creates coherent alignment throughout the body, we start to enhance our perception. We start to become who we really are and the potential of humanity, this bigger being, our larger self. But the key is really in the choice to shift to the heart and replace judgments with compassion, replace fear with perhaps intelligent concern, with more balance and poise to approach it so that we can get more coherence to see what the most appropriate response would be. It's really choosing love. And if you think of love like a rainbow of frequencies, compassion, gratitude, kindness, forgiveness, care, non-judgment, allowance, latitude, all of these heart qualities are aspects of that rainbow, aspects of that pie of love, which you will. And whichever ones we select, we call it attitude replacements, to actually approach and feel, it just triggers a whole global change in response in our brain and body for our health, our performance, our relationships, our connection, and gives us access to what we call the heart's intuitive guidance, the heart's wisdom. And when we get that connection, we make choices moment to moment that are best for ourselves, others, and the wholeness. And that's really the potential of humanity. That's what the science is showing. That physiology underpinning a lot of the meditation practices, the traditions, the mantras, the prayers, is really designed to help us get into that heart rate rhythm coherence, to be able to have that activation of the wholeness of our system into that harmony, and then activate our capacity for emotional composure, for self-regulation, for becoming our best self.
Whew, beautiful. I could listen to this science of evolution discussion all day long. I suspect that the viewers feel the same way. Wow, just astounding. And as you mentioned, maybe it all comes down to love.
Yes.
Feeling into the expression of love, and it activates all of these things that you talk about. Yeah, thank you, Deborah. So Howard, how can we develop a greater capacity to sustain a positive perspective and access intuitive flow throughout the day, even in the midst of challenges?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. Just kidding. Well, it's not easy, especially in these times, based upon the things that Gregg has said about the changes we're going through. Deborah's talked about, a lot of different aspects and angles of it all as well. I think we can make it simple. I mean, there are certain aspects that we have as human beings that are the best parts of who we are. We can call those, core heart values and things like that. But, the essence of who we are is truly as human beings. Now, what happens in life is that through the events of life, through all the emotional triggers that we have, through all the projections that we have about how we're going to come out in various situations in the future and all of that, we end up sort of losing this connection to this part of ourselves. We can say we have it, and it triggers at different times in our life, but in the moment-to-moment, day-to-day, it gets tough. The speed of change is accelerating really, really quickly. So one of the first steps I would recommend to anyone that's listening right now is you got to take pauses. You got to slow down a little bit, at times. The term we have here at Heart Math is called spot checks. You're taking a moment to just step out from the game, step out from the story that you're in right now, and just make a connection with that part of yourself where your best self really comes from. My life's work's been about heart, so naturally I feel like it's a heart intelligent or heart related place inside of ourselves that is where these best parts of ourselves come from. So taking little time outs, moment to moment, day to day, is really key to keeping that connection. Now, when we do slow down a little bit and when we do make connection with our heart, what happens is perceptions about things can change really quickly. And that's the good news. We are developing new capacities as human beings. The science is showing that. The behavioral changes that we're seeing in society are reflecting that. We are evolving. And one of the ways in which we're evolving is developing a greater ability to choose what we're feeling, to choose our own emotional responses to the events of life. Now, if we want to let the speed of change and the story of our day run us around and keep us in the stressful thoughts about what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, who did what, who said what, all the judgments and things that, that show up in our life, we cut ourselves off from intuition. When we slow it back down and we begin to reconnect with our heart's intelligence and begin to ask it and look for guidance from it, then we will access more of what we call intuition. And the key to that is learning to better manage what we're feeling. Most people think emotions are simply reactions to things and that we just react emotionally to the various events of life. It's true that we have emotional reactions constantly to every single bit of input that we ever receive. Every stimulus that we have creates an emotional response. What gets missed in this equation, though, is that we also have the ability to choose emotions. And that's part of the evolution of us as human beings, is a greater capacity to actually do that. To recognize, wait a minute, right now I'm feeling a bit agitated. Well, instead, I think I could feel calm. And to know that you can make that choice and actually exercise the ability you have to make that feeling of calm show up and to bring yourself out of the irritation into a more calm place. When you do that as best you can, throughout the course of a day, a week, a month, or a year, you evolve, you change, your perceptions change, and you have the ability to manage your emotions better. And in doing so, that is how, to answer your question in a sort of a rambling way, that is how you access more of the intuitive qualities that bring in the new insights, that bring in the new angles of view, the new solutions to issues and problems. The inner voice of the heart just gets louder when we have in place an understanding and a desire to better regulate what we're actually feeling. To me, that's the key. So to summarize what I said, it's a heart thing that makes that happen. Slowing down, spot checking during your day, bringing forward the qualities of the heart into your interactions, into your thoughts, into your perceptions, and doing that with some consistency rather than just letting the speed of the day run you around. It's going to naturally open anybody up to accessing more of what we call intuition, this field of information that's nonlinear, that can download on us in a moment with new insights and new perspectives. And that's the way I go about it. It's just doing that the best I can.
Yeah, boy, that sounds good. Yeah, the speed of the day running you around. Everybody can use less of that. Yeah, thank you, Howard. Perfect. So obviously our discussion is really going in the direction of the heart. So Gregg, how can we access cells in the human heart to awaken extraordinary abilities?
I'm going to build on what Debbie described so eloquently, and I tell you, Howard nailed it right on. I really want to emphasize this with our viewers. Viewers, you and I have the ability that no other form of life is known to possess, and that is the ability to choose, just as Howard said, to choose the emotions that we experience rather than simply responding to what the world is giving us. We're taught to react to our external world, and we certainly do that, and we know how to do that very well. But the ability to choose the emotion that we are experiencing in our bodies in a moment in time is such a rare and precious ability and such a key to what we're talking about when we talk about self-regulation. I'm just going to go back to the first conversation. I wasn't sure, Steve. I forgot how long we were supposed to speak. So I cut this piece short. But what I want our viewers to know is that, without getting too technical, human chromosome number 2 is a very mysterious chromosome in the human genome. It is the second largest chromosome in our genome. It makes about 8% of all the DNA in every cell. It appears to be the result of an ancient fusion of 2 pre-existing, completely intact chromosomes that were fused into a larger chromosome And the reason I'm saying this is there's one particular gene, TBR1 is the gene, that gives us all of the abilities that we're talking about right now. It's responsible for our brain, 50% larger than any other, our nearest primate relatives, any other of the primates. It's responsible, here's the key, for our uniquely human capacities of empathy, sympathy, compassion, self-regulation. And it is this ability of self-regulation that we possess today because somehow these genes were fused in a way that cannot be attributed to evolution as we know it today. Something happened 200,000 years ago to other genes as well, but specifically this chromosome 2. And it is the underlying factor for everything that we're talking about right now. So we appear to be wired to thrive in times of extremes. We are wired to self-regulate and to choose our response to our external environment. And this is what the key to so many of the ancient and the indigenous traditions has been about, not telling us how it happened, but helping us to understand how to apply these things in our lives. So I've spent a lot of my adult life, the bulk of my adult life, with ancient and indigenous traditions. I've researched the texts. I've been with the healers and the curanderos and the shamans and the yogis and the mystics, each in their own way, that have found techniques to access precisely what Debbie described so eloquently and the techniques that Howard is describing. They have all found ways to access these experiences in their heart. They dedicated their lives and they moved into isolated, remote places and monasteries and mountaintops, halfway around the world, renounced their worldly possessions because they believed that's what was necessary to access this uniquely human capacity. What I believe that we're saying here today, Steve, is what people in the past have called extraordinary abilities that we're talking about. I personally believe, and I think many of our panel members believe, they're actually ordinary abilities that we simply have forgotten in our lives. And as we embrace these techniques, then the change in our world becomes much less fearful. We learn to thrive in the change because we're not placing our sense of well-being in the world around us, in our external world. We are self-regulating the way that we feel about the change in the world. And in that way, that's where we find our mastery, and that's where our power begins. One of the universal themes that every indigenous tradition I've ever been with has used in accessing this is when they move their awareness from their thinking mind into their feeling heart, they simply touch their heart center. And sometimes they do it with an open palm. Sometimes they'll do it, with a symbol on the chest. Sometimes they'll just do it with a finger or two. And the reason they do that, Steve, is so fascinating is because our awareness will always go to the place in our body where we feel the touch. So I'm going to invite our listeners, just try it right now. Touch your heart center gently and notice, number one, how your body feels when you do that. Number two, your awareness goes to the place where you feel the touch. Now, this is important because the heart is not a polarity organ. It's not like there's a left brain and a right brain in the cranial brain. The heart doesn't work in that polarity. So the 40,000 specialized cells, the sensory neurites that were recently discovered in the human heart that think, feel, and remember independently of the cranial brain, when we draw our attention to our heart, we're drawing our attention to an intelligence, a field, a center of intelligence in our bodies that connects to the greater field. And it's not a polarity intelligence. And where that empowers us, Steve, and this is, again, a long answer to a short question, is it helps us to objectively respond to what life is showing us. When we respond from the mind, our mind always in polarity is always looking at the right, the wrong, the good, the bad, the light, the dark, the failure, the success, and all the judgment and self-esteem loops. And the heart does not do that. Part of my heritage, my genetic heritage, is southeastern Cherokee from southern Missouri and northeastern Oklahoma. And in the Cherokee tradition, there's actually a word for what we're doing. It doesn't exist in the English language. The word in Cherokee is called Shante Ishta. Shante Ishta means single eye of the heart, the eye of the heart that sees what's true for us in a moment, rather than in the polarity of the mind that's always in judgment. And when we can access this intelligence self-regulate our ability to feel the feelings that we choose to feel in our heart, to send the signals to the brain that empower us, that regenerate ourselves, that rejuvenate us in life, that give us resilience to change, access to deep intuition, cellular regeneration, and so much more. That's where our mastery begins. And that leads me back to the very first thing that we said in this panel. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear change in the world, the less we fear our own power. So by accessing this universal ability that every one of us is born with, and we've had since we appeared 200,000 years ago, by accessing our hearts, we empower ourselves not to survive, but to thrive in the new world that's emerging, and that's just what we're wired to do, Steve.
Yes, wow. Well, again, I could curl up in a ball and listen to the science of evolution all day, and I suspect true for our viewers too. It's why this panel is always one of the most viewed panels. It's just extraordinary to understand the science better and the implications of the science. So, yeah, moving from our thinking mind to our heart center, and that's certainly been a theme here across the panel. So, Howard, I'm going to come over to you if I may, and this is a little bit of a technical question, so bear with me. But how can people reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system that speeds heart rate and constricts blood vessels, and increase the activity of the parasympathetic nervous system that slows the heart and relaxes the body?
Well, to do that, the obvious way that most people do it is just simply through breathing. And breathing is good. Breathing can bring about the sympathetic changes that you're talking about. It can create those kind of changes in someone. But that's not going to necessarily solve the bigger issues of how we deal with the speed of change, how we deal with stress, et cetera. Bringing about that sort of, trying to balance out those two parts of our all-important sympathetic nervous system is just the first step. It's not just about like a seesaw, like, okay, I'm having a lot of sympathetic, so now I need to do some breathing and bring in some parasympathetic, and you end up in this situation where you're seesawing back and forth. It takes bringing those two systems into alignment rather than simply trying to balance them out. Like, how do you synchronize those two systems so they're really working together in the very best possible way? Our research has shown that requires not just breathing, but also making a shift in our emotional state. Back to the same theme that I was talking about earlier. In other words, we'll see a coupling of the power and the power spectrum of looking at the sympathetic nervous system when we bring in that positive, uplifting emotion. That's when that begins to happen. And that state is called coherence. I think Deborah alluded to it earlier. Coherence is this highly ordered state where all the major body systems are synchronized and working together for maximum efficiency. It is triggered by and accompanied by sustained, regenerative, uplifting emotions. So what that means is you can breathe, and I think breathing is important. And most heart math techniques have a breathing component, focusing in the area of the heart, imagining as if your breath is flowing in and out through that area. That does begin to bring about more of the balance within the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. But what that is really doing is setting the stage for something more important to happen, which is that emotional shift. Life changes when we shift emotion. It doesn't change much when we don't. It's pretty simple. So when we begin to bring in some of the emotions that I think have long been associated with heart, this concept of heart, like more care, appreciation for the good things in our life, certainly more compassion, extra kindness, less judgment, those type of heart qualities, that is what brings about the big changes occurring in this relationship between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So heart-focused techniques that focus on breathing but also focus on activation of these emotional qualities associated with heart are, to me, the best way for this to happen. And that's what our science has shown over and over again, is we enter this coherent state, which represents what you're talking about. We enter in this coherent state when we go through that process, go through those steps. And it has everything to do, again, with what we're feeling. Now, I know that's, sort of repeating what I said earlier, but understanding how to better regulate this beautiful gift of emotion that we all have, that Gregg pointed out very appropriately, that we're the only living system on the planet that has it. Learning how to accept this gift and to use it in a better way represents, to me, one of the next frontiers in human evolution. That's where we're going on the inside as a global species. The good news is that it's available now more so than ever before. This is part of the shift. This is part of what people have been talking about. The shift isn't just about understanding the cosmos. It's also about how we make better sense of this gift of life that we have. That's what the shift is. When an understanding from sky meets the street, that's when life changes. It has everything to do with learning how to navigate emotionally and make these emotional choices. And one of the representative effects of doing that is a better relationship, a more synchronized relationship between sympathetic and parasympathetic parts of our nervous system.
Alrighty. Yes. Simple as that. Yeah. Thank you, Howard. So yeah, better regulation, bring ourselves into a coherent state, create an emotional shift, or some of us is as you distill down all of the wisdom here. Yeah. Thank you, Howard.
Sure.
So Deborah, now how can people improve the body's hormonal balance and immune system response sometimes you talk about by increasing the presence of joy, gratitude, compassion, and love.
So it's all tied together, what we're talking about, what Gregg and Howard and I'm talking about, and it all comes back to the heart. The heart is really central director, the master coordinator of rhythm in the body. And, in 1990s it was called the decade of the brain, but it was really the decade of the heart, too, because it was the first time that modern science really realized that the heart is a hormonal gland. It's producing as much oxytocin, serotonin, and other hormones as the brain. The heart is also communicating and giving instruction to the brain. Most of the wires, the nerve, the information going between heart and brain is what's called afferent. The heart telling the brain what to do. Through the blood pressure wave, the heart rate variability pattern, and the electromagnetic field that embraces and encompasses the brain and body and radiates way out, can be measured 3 to 5 feet from the body. It is bathing the brain and the cells in the information frequencies of how we feel. So emotion is so important to the immune and hormonal system, because if our heart is radiating with every beat this incoherent stress wave, that is going to impact our cells, our hormonal system, as well as the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic overactivation. We go into depletion, adrenal fatigue. We end up with a whole host of cascade of problems because we're constantly in this stress bath unless we learn how to self-regulate it, unless we learn how to go back to the heart, reset, reboot, and get some more synchronization or coherence going in the system. And that's where love, care, joy, the qualities of the heart you just talked about, they generate harmony. They generate coherent waveforms in the heart rhythm pattern. They activate the heart's intuitive guidance and intelligence. They actually activate these 40,000 neurons that are in the heart that Gregg was referring to that can learn, feel, see, and remember. And they're telling the brain that the body's in a state of harmony rather than a state of stress. And when the body's in a state of stress, the brain produces cortisol, the stress hormone, and overproduces adrenaline. And that imbalances our immune system. So the autonomic nervous system actually controls the immune system and the hormonal system and 90% of the body's involuntary functions. So most yoga, ancient yoga, is about self-regulating the autonomic nervous system, and all these practices that Gregg was referring to are really helping people regulate the 90% that's automatic for health, well-being, but also perception, intelligence, performance, wisdom, what we call extraordinary abilities open up as we get heart, brain, spirit, emotions, mind, all of this coherent, aligned, synchronized. And so we have the ability to put our hands on the regulator, and that involves the feelings of the heart. So again, the quickest way we've seen in our research and teaching in all walks of life, from schools to health professionals to corporate performance to athletic performance to patients in many, many chronic diseases. Dramatic changes happen as people learn how to bring their system into more coherent alignment. And that activates a whole nother set of biochemicals, hormones, immune response. It just creates a natural resonance with nature and the body. And that truly starts with our choice to shift to the heart. Our choice when we start to feel triggered by a stress in these crazy times of accelerated change where emotions really can't keep up with the speed of change and our mind doesn't know what's going to happen. It can go quickly into fear or self-doubt or negation. It's so important for our health, for our immune system, our hormonal system, our perception, everything, for us to be able to learn how to shift and choose qualities that enhance our feelings of love and compassion and care. And that includes especially self-compassion, especially self-appreciation, appreciating our efforts, self-care. And we tend to think that's selfish. We've been brought up in society that, loving yourself is narcissistic. But loving yourself, every time you make those choices to choose a different response, to come back to composure, to spot check, to self-regulate, to choose calm instead of freak out, to choose non-judgment instead of judgment and going down that blame track. Every time we make those shifts and we activate the heart's power and rhythm to help us do that, we are doing a tremendous act of self-love, of self-care with global impact on our own body, on our relationships, and the research is showing on the planetary field environment as well. So I just really want to emphasize the need for people to appreciate themselves, have compassion for themselves. It's so easy with what's going on to doubt ourselves, to start getting into down slants about our judgments. We have to turn all that around and know we're all here doing the best we can and have that compassionate latitude for ourselves and each other. And that enables us to restart the system and improve our hormones, our immune system, our whole mental, emotional system, as well as bring in more spirit, more guidance from our higher intuitive self.
Yeah, beautiful, Deborah. So, gosh, we are hard to believe, but we're already to the wrap-up stage here. So maybe just in 2 minutes, you could, Gregg, Howard, Deborah, just share what you'd like to add as we close this down. Certainly, so Global Oneness Day is all about this shift and this transformation. And this panel is sharing it's really about the heart, that where we come into heart coherence and create global coherence. So what are things that you might want to add here, Gregg? And you might share your website too. And then we'll go Howard and Deborah for 2 minutes each, if you would, please.
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, this time went unbelievably fast. I would like to add, Dr. Deborah Rozman, you rock. You absolutely rock. I love it when you pull things together so concisely the way you just did. And, Steve, this is the science panel. We, as a society, we've asked science to tell us who we are. And science is doing precisely that. Science is making new inroads using new technology and revealing deep truths about us, our relationship to our bodies, to the world, to the past. And the question is, do we have the courage to accept what the science is telling us? It is causing a lot of discord in the scientific community. What we're finding is a lot of scientists don't like the answers that are being revealed. There's a battle that is unfolding in our lives right now. It's a battle for our thoughts. It's a battle for our story. It's a battle for the way that we've been taught to think about ourselves. And the best science of the modern world is now giving us the reason to change the way we've been taught to think. Scott Turow, an American author, an awesome author, he said very famously, he said, "Who are we? But the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and believe." There's a new human story that's emerging. And it's based on the science that's overturning 150 years of traditional thinking. So I appreciate you, Steve, and our humanities team for making it possible for us to share we're just scratching the surface of some of this science. My colleagues, I want to thank you all for the work that you do and for the courage you have to bring that work forward. My website, www.greggbraden.com. That's Gregg with 2 G's, Greggbraden. That's 3 G's altogether, okay? But it's 2 G's on the end, Greggbraden.com. Check out that website to stay tuned with the newest discoveries that you're simply not seeing in the mainstream media, classrooms, textbooks, but it's peer-reviewed science, rock-solid science, writing the new human story.
Yeah, thank you, Gregg. Amen. And Howard, in 2 minutes, if you would, and then Deborah in 2 minutes.
Sure. Well, first of all, this is Global Oneness Day, so I hope everybody who's listening to this conversation today is feeling a connection, feeling connected to the larger whole, a recognition that, we're all one, really. Energetically, we could go into a whole nother realm of science here around energetic connections between all living systems, but new science is showing that we are, in fact, all connected. We're connected in a variety of ways, seen and unseen, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge and recognize that now. We all need to have a bit more compassion, I think. The term that we are using here at HeartMath a lot is compassionate latitude, which means expanding that compassion a little bit to be more inclusive of what's going on. People are doing the best they can in their lives. And it's tough right now for a lot of people going through these changes. Science can help. Science provides security. One of the ways in which I see science as being useful is it increases the power of belief. When something is proven through science to be empirically true, then we can believe it easier. I think it's important now to take the new science and use it to verify things that our own heart's intuition has been saying to us. Use it in ways that we get that next level of security to act on what our hearts have been saying to us all along. The gentle nudges that come from their intuition, or sometimes when it's loud about what needs to change, about what we need to do or not do. These are all gifts that we're getting right now, and science can help to build the bridge to acceptance of those gifts. And I think that's part of the beauty of the science today, is that it's giving us the ability to feel more secure in what, our own hearts have been saying to us. So my feeling about it all is let's recognize that we're all connected, that we're all one, that we're all, playing in the same game, and we're playing in the same big yard. And let's put out more love and care and compassionate latitude for each other. That will lead to new scientific understanding, so that when we have a show 2 or 3 years from now, there's going to be plenty more to say, because that's what it takes to really break through the ceiling of understanding, where new science can show up to give us the proof of some of the things that we really do know deep in our hearts are true. So I wish everybody a great Global Oneness Day. Thanks for having me on the program today.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. And we are deeply interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent. We really are all one. So Deborah, over to you for the final 2 minutes here, and your website, please, for HeartMath.
Well, I would just really want to thank you for sponsoring this, as you have year after year after year. Global Oneness Day, I feel people are seeing it's more than a concept or an ideal of oneness. It's coming into being in body of people perceiving it, feeling it, connecting. And yes, the internet and media is helping that, and it's creating a lot of stir and controversy and polarization. But out of that is emerging more heart, more care. You see it, you feel it, you hear it. People are talking about the heart. When they come together with the increasing number of natural disasters, they're talking about taking care of each other, paying it forward. There's certainly an expression and movement of heart. And the reason is because people are awakening to the reality of what we've all been talking about, the science of it. But it's also happening in that there's huge heart opening occurring in a new world being birthed in the old world, as more people feeling the oneness. And I'm honored to be here with Gregg and Bruce and Howard to talk about our discoveries, the leading edge of what we see happening in the world in terms of science, to give people that hope and confirmation of what they may be sensing or feeling inside. And I would love to leave people with the feeling that the choice to forgive, the choice not to judge, and that happens in ratios. We're not going to be perfect, and it's not about that. But the choice to do that more and more, and the choice to love, and to know that we're all growing up, maturing, learning that, is really the powerful shift. And it puts out a different vibration into the Earth's energetic fields. It lifts the vibration of the field environment. And some of this is being researched at HeartMath and other places of the impact of our heart rhythm coherence, our heart coherence on brain, body, on each other, on our social coherence, our connectivity, and how we all get along. And then on global coherence, how we couple with the Earth's fields and all the changes the Earth's going through at the same time. And the more we have that coherent alignment, because coherence happens at every level of nature, from the quantum level to the macro level and inside us. And the more we can align with this shift process through the heart, the more we see what's going on, the more we have glimpses and can co-create with it and collaborate, because oneness is there, but for it to be a reality for human beings, we have to co-create it. We have to align with it. We have to connect and come back to it like a resonant frequency. And as many of us do that, it shifts the vibration, it lifts the vibration of the whole planetary field. And from our perception and understanding, it doesn't have to be billions of people to help shift and really create a whole new world. It's enough people who care to choose the way of love and to choose the way of, as I said before, self-compassion, true self-care, because that's what gives us the power to love others and to care for others and to have compassion for others, because we're not doing it for ourselves. It drains, and we don't have the juice or the power we could have to really facilitate lifting others. And that's, to me, what we're all about. People listening to this are drawn to hearing about global oneness because we all want to participate, learn, contribute in some way. And I hope what we've shared today on the science will give people more of an understanding of the physiology of how we can interact with ourselves and each other in the world and really get ourselves more aligned and coherent to be able to contribute and co-create this new world that it's really about. So I'm honored to have spent this time with all of you, and we each have a unique part to play, Gregg, Bruce, Howard, myself, in this unfoldment of the research and others out there who are doing that. But I do believe that's what getting published, peer-reviewed papers, that's what helps other scientists who are fear-based or skeptical or stuck in the head see, well, maybe I should open to the heart a little more. Maybe there's something there. And any way we can facilitate that shift to the heart will help global oneness. So thank you.
And I think it's heartmath.com.
Yes, heartmath.com.
Heartmath.com. Thank you so much, Deborah. Wow. So what a wisdom filled. Next, you will hear from Bruce Lipton, who will now be coming to the panel. And welcome, Bruce Lipton, to Global Oneness Day. It's great to have you with us.
I am so happy to be here because this is a very auspicious time to understand that global oneness is what is required for us to move through this very strange history where we're changing from one evolutionary paradigm into another, and this is the interface. So thank you for allowing me to be here with you all.
Oh, Bruce, thank you, because you're a real leader out front here in this whole shift, transformation, awakening, just saying it plain like it is of, hey, come on, people, now's our time. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here with us for Global Oneness Day.
Thank you.
All right, so the first question here, let's just jump right into this. So you share that environment, and of course, this I mentioned in your introduction when I read your bio, that you're a biologist, and you share that environment, not genes, is the key to understanding health and well-being. Can you talk a little bit about this, Bruce?
Yeah, Steve, well, one of the most important things is this, that almost everybody out there right now has been programmed with the belief that genes control the character of their lives. That as far as people know, they didn't pick the genes they came with. And so at the moment of conception, apparently there's like a program, here are your genes, and this is going to be your life, given the fact that we also believe that genes turn on and off. So they say a gene turned on, a gene turned off, and I go, why is that relevant? Because that's the belief then that control is not with you, the control is with the genes. And as a result, I say, what's the significance of the fact that A, I didn't pick the genes I came with, B, supposedly the genes control all the characters of my life, and C, that the genes turn on and off by themselves? The result is simple. We are victims of our heredity when we believe that. If there's cancer running in the family, oh my God, I can get the cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, whatever. And when you say I'm a victim, you're really saying I'm powerless. I have no control over my health. And then we give up our power to the medical profession and say, listen, it's not working right, you fix it. When it turns out that belief system is 100% false. And the relevance is this. The new science is called epigenetics. And I say, but it sounds like the old science, genetics. I go, well, as a professor, what I was teaching medical students in school was the fact that genes control our life. That's the belief called genetic determinism, which simply implies that your life is not under your control. Your life is under the control of genes. You had no control over that. Victim, powerless. And then we look for someone to heal us, a rescuer. And so we give our life and our health over to the medical profession and say, okay, I can't do it. Victim of my genes, you fix me. Old belief, powerless. New belief is epigenetics, and the difference is simply this. When I say genetic control, that translates as control by genes. When I say the new science, epigenetic control, it's a revolution because epi means above. So epigenetic control translates as control above the genes. I go, wait, then what's controlling the genes? And now comes the miracle of modern day awareness, and that is our consciousness, our perception of the world, our environment. These are the factors that control our genes. I say, so why is that relevant? I say, I can change my environment. I can change my perceptions. So consequently, I'm actually the master of my genes, not the victim of them. And this is empowerment at the highest level. It says, I control the character of my life as compared to the old belief, I'm just unfolding a genetic program and that's how it works out. And I say, so the significance is this, we are empowered to change the character of our behavior, our genetics. We're the masters, we're the creators. But the problem is most people don't understand that the nature of that creation is based on the mind. And I say, why? Because the mind perceives the environment. The mind interprets the environment in this case. So I could live in the healthiest environment, but if my perceptions or beliefs say this is a very toxic environment, my cells don't see the real environment. They depend on my nervous system to translate the environment so that we can adjust our biology to conform with environmental needs. So my biology is dependent now on my nervous system to read that environment and then send the signals like a conductor of an orchestra to each of the organ systems to control the biology to fit the environment. And here's the problem. If our perception is correct, then our biology is in harmony with the world. If our perceptions are not correct, misperceptions, then we adjust our biology out of tune with the world around us, and that causes disharmony. And disharmony in biology is called dis-ease. And so we create our diseases. Less than 10% and presumably 1% of diseases connected to genetics. And I say, well, in a healthcare crisis that's affecting the globe, then where's the problem? And the answer is not the genes. Right. The problem is the perception. And why is this important? We create perceptions, and we can change perceptions, and therefore we can change our health. The simplest understanding is placebo effect. I say, what does that mean? I say, I have a disease, I'm suffering. Doctor says, here's this newest pill. This is just for you. It's a special new thing. And you take this pill and you get well. And then you find out it was a sugar pill. And then I'm saying, so what really cured you? And the answer was, you change your perception. You change your belief. And you change your genes. Same thing occurs in a spontaneous remission when someone has a cancer and then all of a sudden expresses spontaneous remission, the cancer is gone. What caused the change? And the answer is a change in consciousness. So our mind is creating the state that we're in. And then when you look at the world and you see how much sickness and illness, I say, it's not the genes, it's the programming that keeps us out of being in harmony with the world that determines our biology, our behavior, our fate.
Boy, in my home, we now, this is a part of our discussion, even with our dog, as we talk about keeping her healthy, that it's all environment, it's not the genes. I mean, it's a constant thing that comes up, and thank you for that. And even epigenetics, people like Joel Osteen and others that have these huge, multi-million audiences globally, I hear them come in now with the epigenetics discussion, and it's all straight from your leadership and research. So thank you for that. Let me throw a tough one at you here relating to this day here, Bruce, Global Oneness Day. As you know, the prevailing belief out in today's world is, well, we're all separate, of course. You're over there and I'm over here, and the tree and the earth and the divine. But the new science is saying, no, everything is deeply, deeply interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent, actually a part of one thing. Do you want to talk to that? Because it's why Global Oneness Day is here, is we're trying to bring awareness to what ultimate reality really is.
The interconnectedness that we're talking about is really supported by two fields, physics and biology. And physics, here's the significance. In physics, we all talk about a Newtonian world. I go, what does that mean? That's a world that separates the universe into two realms, a physical material realm and an energy realm. So the universe is two realms. And that being a body and being in a physical realm, anything physical is affected by things physical. So if you're having trouble with your life, which is a physical expression, then drugs and chemistry and physical ways of intervening are what we seek. And I go, that's because we separated matter from energy. But then I say, what happened in 1925? Quantum physics put the two together and said matter is just a strange form of energy. I say, so what's the significance? I say, okay, here are two hands. If you look at them as being matter only, look, I've separated them, two separate hands. I can talk about each one independently of the other. But then when you find out this is an illusion, that it's actually all energy, and I say, well, energy doesn't have borders. Energy mixes together. It's all one big aquarium of energy. I say, why is it relevant? I'm made out of, this hand's made out of energy. This hand's made out of energy. Guess what? While you see them as separate, energy is always connected. Why? No borders to it. So the relevance is simply this. In the world that we live in today, based on quantum physics, the most valid science on planet Earth, quantum physics acknowledges this, that everything is energy, and as a result, there is no separation of anything in this universe. All energy is connected, and all of a sudden that illusion of separation has to disappear. Now, in biology, there's also the illusion of separation, and as a result, we see ourselves as just like being physical victims in a world that's going on around us. And it's interesting because what the new science of epigenetics talks about is that's a perception. If you believe you are separate, then you are separate. Not that you really are separate, but your belief is manifesting your reality. Oh, wait a minute, let's back up. Quantum physics, most valid science on planet, most tested, most verified of all sciences, recognizes first principle, consciousness is creating our life experience. Fact. Point. Change consciousness and you change life experience. If we've been programmed as we have with beliefs that cause disempowerment, self-sabotage, limitation, because we bought these beliefs, we disempower ourselves. So the foundation of quantum physics reveals that consciousness is creating the world. And if we don't like the world, we don't go out and physically change the world. We first start by changing our consciousness of the world, because we're manifesting a reality. There's a quote by Albert Einstein, so fabulous and short. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. Well, that might sound abstract, except let's just say, what is field? The energy that we're in, the energy, the field. is the sole governing agency of the particle. Particle is matter, okay? So what's it saying? The field, the energy is the sole governing agency of matter. And it's really important to understand this because it says, since we are manifesting a field, then we have the ability to manifest a different expression of matter. And that, matter of fact, is not a different. We're expressing this field right now with this way, but if we change our field, we change the expression of this matter. And evolution is calling on us to say a very important point. The way humans have been living on this planet has precipitated the sixth mass extinction of life. 5 times in the history of this planet, life was thriving, and some cataclysmic event wiped out up to 90% of life. Last time, 66 million years ago, tropical flush forests all over with dinosaurs. A comet hits near Mexico, upends the ecosystem. Web of life collapses, 90% of life disappears. Today's sixth mass extinction, we're losing species of organisms faster than in previous mass extinctions, but it's due to human behavior. I say, well, how is that? And I said, well, human behavior is consciousness. And the consciousness that we're employing on this planet is self-destructive. And the idea is that we are causing our own extinction. And this is not 1,000 years from now. We're talking within the century and within a few decades, a couple more decades. They even say there won't even be any fish in the ocean. Planet Earth with no fish in the ocean? And who did that? We did that. Overfishing, destroying breeding grounds, polluting the ocean. We've done this all over the planet and ecosystems everywhere. And then now we're failing. Now the planet is undergoing this sixth mass extinction. And the way out is what? Well, if facing this mass extinction, since we've created it, we are the ones that can change it. And I said, well, how are you going to change evolution? I say, first of all, you have to change your perceptions and your belief. The field. Our consciousness field, as physics said, is creating this. If we change our consciousness, we change the field. And all of a sudden it says, then we're not victims, we are powerful creators. But then you have to look at your consciousness and say, is my consciousness supporting my life? And I say, well, you're playing programs from downloaded before age 7, 95% of your life. And what that really means is this, your basic programming the first 7 years is shaping the character of your life. And if your life is not in harmony, there's always a tendency to say, oh, I'm a victim. Things outside are preventing me from experiencing the things I want. And I go, no, we now know that your own subconscious, below conscious information is shaping your life. So if there's trouble in your life, it's not coming from the outside. It's actually being created by your consciousness. So is there a call upon us, all of us right now, is to say, darn it, we better change all of our collective consciousness right now. Otherwise, the end is looming right in front of us. And this is what the upheaval on the planet is all about right now. The upheaval is this. The chaos of the world is the civilization we've been living under is causing our own extinction. We need to create a new civilization. So the old one is coming down, the new one is coming up. But between the old one and the new one, there's this chaos, which is one coming down and one going up. And so when you look at the world right now and you see how scary it is, I just want people to understand this. This is the most important step in our evolution. We're breaking the old structure down so we can build one that we can thrive into the future. And so not looking at fear of what's going on, but looking at, wow, this is great. This is the opportunity to create a world we can thrive into to create a better way of living.
Okay, perfect. And that'll be the last word. Boy, and how perfect for Global Oneness Day.
All right.
To bring all this in. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here during the Evolution Through Science program. Gratitude to you, Bruce.
I appreciate this, and I appreciate everyone out there, because collectively, the future that we can move into is heaven on earth, because since we're creating it, why not do that one?
So what a wisdom-filled and heartfelt hour, and certainly we've contributed to this unfolding of the experience of global oneness here from this program's discussion. So huge thank you, Gregg, Bruce, Deborah, Howard. What a powerful and transformative hour, and so gratitude to you, friends. If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanities Team transformational education programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.